right, so this last spring I was in Doolittle Hall for POW dedication of this bronze relief statue, and this guy who's a Vietnam POW, Air Force Academy grad, he's up on stage, and once he gets done with the talk, he says, "I'd like all the convicted felons to come up here, please." And all the POWs came up, and I was just really confused, and you kind of looked around the audience, the whole audience was just, what is going on? And he's like, "Oh yeah, we're all convicted of air piracy over the sovereign nation of the People's Republic of Vietnam." So I thought it was just pretty funny how just kind of lighthearted he was about it at the time. Definitely talked about some more deep stuff like Nick Rowe did in his speech to the Army General Staff College. So a little bit different though than a lot of the stories that we know. Nick Rowe was he was in the South Vietnam Army. He was captured a lot sooner, so there are a lot of differences. But his story is really really crazy and something he doesn't really go into too much in his speech to Staff College. But I think it really hits home of kind of his sense of purpose that he gains. You really evident in his speech and kind of his really deeply held views and faith, faith in higher power, but also faith in country that he really talks about. So kind of different. So Nick Rowe was in South Vietnam. I say South Vietnam, I mean like the very tip in the Mekong River Valley. And basically, Vietnamese were able to, Viet Cong were able to control that area because using the Ho Chi Minh Trail, go through Laos and get all the way down to the southern tip. It's almost the southernmost part of Vietnam. So things were a lot different there because you don't have as much organization. So the POW camps were pretty makeshift. They weren't more like the Hanoi Hilton that we're probably more familiar of. Stuff like that. Lance Saigon was held in, which actually had cells. These were kind of like kept more like bamboo cages and just kind of had guards that also had daily lives, kind of like a lot like the movie Rescue Dawn, kind of what from this book, 5 Years for Freedom, he talks about. So it's a lot different. Starvation, big problem there. Disease, not as much the interrogation and stuff. Well, he does really talk about that in his speech. He talks about them twisting the code of conduct and just kind of getting in his head. But definitely not like the full-scale tortures that a lot of the pilots recount their experience of in the Hanoi Hilton and stuff like that. So well, he does kind of focus on the psychological hardships. He doesn't really hit on a lot of the other stuff he went through that really makes his story so amazing. So like a couple things. Tried escaping a few times. One of his first escape attempts, he was recaptured, put in like a bamboo cage, like kind of strapped like up with like water all around, and was like left there for like 2 months, unable to like move with another guy. Failed his indoctrination. He said in his speech, he talks about him being a political prisoner and kind of wanted to torture him, but mainly wanting to indoctrinate him. So he failed along with one of his friends, Captain Versace, and finds out later through like a radio broadcast that the VC let him hear that his fellow captain is executed, just outright executed. They said he killed a few guards, but it's always up to interpretation. Another thing that's pretty crazy is Captain Walker, who comes along later in his adventure. He dies and is taken away, and they say they're taking him to a hospital. Well, he's not dead yet, but he's dying. And they say they're taking him to a hospital. He has ringworm infection so bad that it looks like he's been shot through the hand. He's bleeding so badly. And also there's Sergeant Tadio, who has hemorrhoids that are so bad he's just profusely bleeding. Pretty bad mental image, but it was just his resolve through all that is just unbelievable, and something that he doesn't really even go into in his talk because I'm sure they at least somewhat familiar with his story at the time. So he talks about that, and then also as well, some of his fellow prisoners were released and given to his pacifist and the anti-war guy at the time, Tom Hayden, and like 5 5 of his fellow prisoners in his camp of 8 people were released. The other 3 died, so it's just Nick Rowe in this camp. And they tell him that he's not allowed to go, but everyone else is, because he isn't indoctrinated enough, and he didn't say all the right things. So later in his speech, he talks about, you know, just faith in country, really how he really trusted that, you know, that not the government was there for him, you know, because that can always be twisted and stuff, but that America was there for him. And really have to have conviction in that in order to, you know, endure all these things and not, you know, give in to the enemy and make, you know, statements that are disloyal to your allies and harmful to your cause, because if you don't have that conviction, it's pretty impossible to stand up to the stuff that he did. I thought that was really interesting as well, going back to the POWs that I talked to at Doolittle Hall. You know, they all said that kind of all the same thing. They said that, you know, they just had a faith in our country that just ran really deep. And Nick also hits on a more like higher power piece, and so do the POWs that I had. I feel like it's very difficult to endure such hardship and not believe that, it's hard to endure all that hardship and not believe there's something more to life, that there's not this something else you're living for. Otherwise, it's just pretty depressing. And I think it's pretty crazy with Nick Rowe, him going all the way to Colonel with that. You see that drive that driven a lot of former Vietnam POWs like Senator John McCain and a lot of others become business leaders. And I think it all comes back to that deep conviction and drive that really forced to adapt.